Hi, I'm Lyndsay Hissink and I work at Edgewood, and I've been a counselor here since 2012. And when I first started out at Edgewood, I was working in inpatient. I worked in inpatient for 3 years and then transferred over to the outpatient program. And since I've been in outpatient, my work has been focused mostly on eating disorders, disordered eating, body image, and self-worth. I also do some work around addiction as well, but eating disorder is my primary focus and something that I'm really, really passionate about. The main reason that I'm passionate about it is because I'm in recovery myself. I'm 13 years sober and also in recovery from anorexia and bulimia. And my story is that I found my eating disorder before I found alcoholism. And what I mean by that is that my eating disorder started when I was 13 years old. And the way I see it is that my eating disorder did for me eventually what alcohol would do. And excuse me, much like we talk about alcoholism not being about alcohol, eating disorders are not about food, weight, and body. It's simply what we use in order to deal with the emotional unrest. And so at 13 years old, I found myself restless, irritable, and discontent, unaware of it, but using my eating disorder in order to deal with that. I also realized at a very young age that in my family, if you were sick, you got attention. And so I witnessed my sister being in addiction and getting a lot of attention for that. And when I got sick with my eating disorder, I then got attention. So I assumed that I needed to be sick in order to get attention. Whether that was real or not, it was how I perceived it at the time. And so I entertained my eating disorder for many, many years. And I found alcohol when I was 19 years old. And it didn't take the place of my eating disorder. Simply what happened is that they just existed together. And then what happened was that my family and I played this game with treatment around, did I need to go to eating disorder treatment or did I need to go to treatment for alcoholism? And so the decision was that I would go to eating disorder treatment. And I did that and focused on my eating disorder, came out in recovery, but started drinking again. And as soon as I started drinking again, all of my eating disorder recovery fell to the wayside, because it's impossible to be drinking and eating properly. So that went on for many years actually, where we were doing eating disorder treatment or alcohol treatment, and we had a lot of trouble trying to find me appropriate help. And so if we look today at Edgewood, one of the things that's so wonderful about Edgewood is that we treat eating disorders and addiction together. Edgewood is not an eating disorder treatment facility, but we do what we can in order to support individuals with an eating disorder. And I'm so passionate about the work that we do here. One, because I'm able to share my own experience with these men and women who are struggling with an eating disorder. And two, simply because this is the new thing to be treating co-occurring disorders. And it's so wonderful to be a part of that. At Edgewood, when you come in, if you share with our doctor that you have a past of eating disorder, that automatically flags you for a consultation with myself and also with Clay Sanders, who is our nutrition manager, and him and I work very closely together. Him and I have a conversation with you to talk about your past with eating disorders, as well as what we can be doing to help you nutritionally. You'll then attend our eating disorder group, which happens once a week on Tuesday afternoons. And then it also sets you up for a one-to-one session with me once a week or more if you're needing it. So the main focus being that we want individuals to be able to focus on their addiction while they're here, because that's the primary reason they came to Edgewood. And by allowing them to have a group and to be able to have contact with Clay and I and talk about their eating disorder, that allows them to focus on the addiction. So they're not distracted by their eating disorder. Eating disorders are all consuming. And so oftentimes in group, I'll hear people share about being all consumed by food, weight, and body. So if you're at Edgewood and you're all consumed by those thoughts, it makes it very difficult to focus on your addiction. So by providing this group where these individuals can come into group, they can talk about it, they can be understood, they can relate, it becomes this outlet so that when they go out into the general population, they can focus on the addiction piece. And that's one of the most wonderful things about this. The same goes for their one-to-one sessions with me. The same goes for sitting at mealtime with other eating disorder patients, a chance to just talk about what's going on for them rather than stuffing it down. One of the most important things that our clients can do when they first get admitted to Edgewood is really think before they're answering those initial intake questions about if there is a history of eating disorder. We can get hung up on the idea of I don't have a diagnosed eating disorder, and it doesn't have to be a diagnosed eating disorder. If you sense that in your past there was a disordered eating, and generally there is in addiction we don't have a healthy relationship with food, it's so important that our clients identify that. Because what can happen is that as soon as we take away the drug of choice, this illness will desperately look for some other way to mood alter. Whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's flirting, it doesn't matter what it is, it's looking for some way to mood alter. So if you sense that there's some disordered eating in your past, you need to mention that, because that will right away get you to a place where you're able to talk with Clay and I. The most valuable tool in this is awareness. If you have the awareness that you may be emotionally eating while at Edgewood, we have Rascals, and Rascals has chips and chocolate bars, so it's pretty common that clients can have a tough group and then into Rascals they go to have something to eat because they're feeling poorly, right? And that's a lot more comfortable than finding a peer and talking about their feelings, right? There's no shame around doing that. What's important is that you have the awareness that you're doing it and you talk about it. And it's always amazing when I do my lecture on eating disorders, how much awareness that creates. Generally, the mood at the beginning of the lecture is, oh, this doesn't apply to me, I don't have an eating disorder. And halfway through, everyone's raising their hand, everyone's engaging, people are aware, because it doesn't have to be a diagnosis of an eating disorder, right? We suffer from an illness that's going to look to mood alter, and food is a great way to do it. Unlike substance use disorder, where you abstain from alcohol and drugs, with eating disorders, you can't abstain from food. You have to develop this healthy relationship with something that you have probably never had a healthy relationship with from the beginning. And I always liken it to somebody putting a bottle of vodka in front of me and telling me, okay, Lyndsay, now we're going to teach you how to have a healthy relationship with this bottle of vodka. And I know it's impossible. Well, we do that with food. With eating disorder patients, we say, you have to have a healthy relationship with this. And it can be very overwhelming. Oftentimes, they're talking about 5 to 7 years before that healthy relationship with food is established. And that doesn't mean that there are not episodes of relapse along the way. I have an example of that in my own story, in that I was sailing along in terms of my eating disorder recovery. And what that looks like for me is I still meet with an eating disorder therapist and a dietitian. And I still am constantly vigilant of what I'm eating throughout the day. I always have this mantra for myself that I say, I don't have the luxury today of missing a meal, which is much the same as I don't have the luxury of walking into a liquor store, right? A lot of my friends can miss breakfast, miss dinner here and there. I can't do that because I have this personality where I think, I missed breakfast this morning, I can get away with it today too. And I don't even want to go down that road. But where I had a reoccurrence of it was after I had my son, and my body had changed. I had put on weight, and I started to have body image issues again after my son was born. Now, before, when I said awareness is key, awareness was huge for me because I sensed that it was coming up, and I talked about it, and I opened up about it, and I worked through it, right? And that's what's so important in recovery, is to know that you may have instances in your life where this comes up, but you have the tools in order to deal with it. And that's the most important thing. And I always tell my clients today, if you don't drink or you don't use, then we can work on this. If you choose to pick up, then we can't work on it anymore. So as long as you stay sober, we can work on the food piece. We want to do what we can to support you and your eating disorder so that it doesn't become a distraction from the work you need to do on your addiction.